The sun rose quietly over Alabama, but peace wasn't something Dottie Alyson ever believed in. Not the way the Galaxy used the word. Peace was what you got after winning a bar fight and buying your opponent a beer. Real peace always came after the fire. She stood on her creaky porch, wrapped in a robe that had survived 3 hurricanes, sipping instant coffee from a chip mug that read "World's Okayest Grandma." The news pinged through the outdated console in her kitchen. Another Empire broadcast, full of sterile regret and neutral terminology, offering their deep condolences for the unfortunate civilian loss Earth had endured. Dottie's jaw clenched as the image of her granddaughter Linda shimmered beside a holographic ambassador who couldn't fake empathy if it were hard-coded. They killed her with a clean bolt and called it statistical. Her hands didn't shake. She just exhaled slowly, like she had on the day she shot her first general back in 2123 during the underground insurrection on Europa. She'd promised herself back then that when war found her family again, she wouldn't hide behind politics or eulogies. She'd act. Linda's death hadn't just sparked military tension. It had broken something sacred. The kind of break that echoed through church halls and VFW backrooms, over poker tables and kitchen counters. Earth was riled up, but Dottie was beyond that. She wasn't angry. She was activated. And when an activated Alyson got moving, the safest thing anyone could do was get out of her way or hand her ammunition. She went inside and opened the drawer under the sink. Not for a weapon. Not yet. For her old leather planner, the one she used before AI calendars became mandatory. It held numbers. Real ones. People she hadn't called in decades. Veterans who knew the smell of carbon scoring better than perfume. Women who baked for church fundraisers and could disassemble a railgun blindfolded. The kind of people who never officially existed. She dialed the first number. No name. Just a series of tones. The line clicked once. Then silence. Dottie smiled. That was enough. In a Nevada trailer park disguised as a meth lab, but actually housing 3 X-Base commandos and a former intelligence officer with a fondness for old game shows, a burner phone vibrated. A man named Griggs answered, squinting through a hangover. The words he heard were few. Linda's gone. We start now. He stood up without finishing his coffee and began packing. In Florida, 3 retirees left their fishing trip mid-cast. In Montana, a woman named Rose canceled her quilting bee and opened a duffel bag filled with ordnance. Earth's military command had no idea it was being outmaneuvered by its own grandparents. The human general, Hank McAllister, had just finished a classified briefing on the growing Galactic standoff when an emergency intelligence note came through. Someone had hacked into an Empire satellite relay near Jupiter's 6th moon. The culprit hadn't stolen anything. They'd just overridden the signal. Played an old Oath song, Dolly Parton's 9 to 5. Loudly. Twice. He rubbed his temples. Only one person would do something that's subtle and petty at the same time. He pulled up a secure channel. Her face appeared on screen. She looked older. The wrinkles had grown in like battle scars, her hair now white like old gun smoke. But her eyes were the same, steady, loaded, and devoid of fear. Hank stared at her for a long second. Dot, I was hoping you were done with this sort of thing. Dottie gave a short nod. I was, but the Galaxy made a choice. He sighed. Earth's barely holding its alliances together. We just got the Empire to back off for now. You start stirring up your old crew in. You'll have to arrest us, and you're welcome to try. Hank knew better. She wasn't threatening. She was informing. Dottie didn't bluff. She offered facts like lead offers velocity. Just don't make it messy, he said. It's already messy, she replied. They made it messy the moment they touched family. Hank shut the console with a heavy exhale. He wouldn't stop her. Couldn't. And in a strange way, he didn't want to. There was a rhythm to Earth's madness. A pattern. Bureaucrats filed forms. Soldiers held lines. But the real fury came from people like Dottie, who'd survived every empire Earth ever faced, foreign, domestic, or interstellar, and refused to let history repeat. Dottie moved fast. Within 48 hours, her team, a patchwork of veterans, hackers, saboteurs, and one ornery biker with a robotic kneecap and a fondness for karaoke, had reactivated an old mining vessel hidden beneath Lake Michigan. It had once been used for illegal asteroid harvesting before being buried in ice and redacted into myth. Now it was being reborn as the Lawn Dart Asterisk, a ship that looked like a scrap heap mirrored a barbecue pit, outfitted with both Earth tech and repurposed alien weaponry. They didn't need stealth. They needed personality. And Dottie's team had plenty. Their first move wasn't destruction. It was theater. They jumped into the neutral orbit zone of the Empire's closest diplomatic station and broadcast a signal. Not a demand, not a threat. Just Linda's picture, smiling beside a grill, apron dusted with flour, waving at someone off camera, followed by 5 words, asterisk you attacked our woman. Remember asterisk. The galaxy noticed. The message rippled through communication hubs and news feeds. The Empire tried to suppress it. Failed. Alien species unfamiliar with human emotional coding found themselves confused by the tone. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't wrath. It was a declaration of intent, wrapped in kitchen warmth and underscored by bone-deep vengeance. The ambassador of Zalfurian Prime issued a formal inquiry, asking, is the Earth's leadership now ceded to their elderly citizens? The United Terran Alliance answered with a shrug and a transmission of the Golden Girls theme song. Within a day, several fringe worlds declared neutral status, refusing to involve themselves in matters involving their females or their extended relations. The Empire's Central War Council convened to address what they termed an emotional insurgency event. Their solution was predictable: deploy peacekeeping drones, tighten trade embargoes, issue a revised apology written by their least creative diplomat. But none of that mattered, because Dottie wasn't looking for apologies. She was looking for attention. And attention she got. While the Empire tried to apply pressure, Dottie's crew hit their supply lines like a swarm of caffeinated hornets. Not with destruction, but inconvenience. They jammed cargo routes with Earth music, turned gravity fields upside down, swapped Empire food rations with TV dinner replicas, and broadcast asterisk home improvement asterisk reruns into classified surveillance networks. The message was simple: you hit us clean, we hit you weird. By the time the Empire recognized what was happening, 5 of their diplomatic satellites were reprogrammed to display American diner menus in flashing neon fonts. One of their dignitaries suffered a nervous collapse after being trapped in a simulation loop of "you've got mail for 7 hours." The problem wasn't just that Earth was retaliating. The problem was that Earth was having fun doing it. But it wasn't a joke for Dottie. Every move was precise, every prank grounded in strategic subversion. She knew the Empire's weakness wasn't in their tech. It was in their pride. They couldn't handle not being taken seriously. And Earth, with all its contradictions and chaos, had made that irreverence an art form. Back at her ship, Dottie pinned Linda's old apron above the navigation console. It smelled faintly of cinnamon and smoke. Every time she looked at it, her voice steadied, her aim sharpened. This wasn't about starting a war. It was about ending the idea that humans could be broken by loss without answering back. The galaxy had seen humans fight with fire. Now they would see what happened when humans fought with soul. And humor. And a deep, unrelenting memory. As the Lawn Dart powered up its jump core, targeting the Empire's primary diplomatic outpost for a polite conversation, Dottie took her seat at the helm. She adjusted her readers, sipped her coffee, and muttered under her breath, "You're really showing TV touched our girl." Then she hit the ignition, and the galaxy shuddered. The Galactic diplomatic station on Heron Prime had never seen anything quite like the Lawn Dart. It defied regulation, reason, and every visual expectation of what a spacecraft should be. It approached not cloaked, not stealthy, but with a full lighting rig that spelled out grits and justice in rotating cursive. Inside the station's control room, alarms buzzed and alerts flashed, but none of the Empire's mid-ranking officials could comprehend the incoming threat. Their scanners picked up conflicting data. Some of the Lawn Dart systems were cobbled together from scrap mining haulers. Others were impossibly advanced in reading at quantum-level interference. One AI labeled the vessel as a carnival attraction. Another flagged it as a Class 4 threat. The only certainty was that it was heading straight for them, and its external speakers were playing LYNYRD-SKYYRD's Simple Man at full volume. Ambassador Creel, still smarting from his recent demotion and reassignment to a desk job just 1 floor above waste filtration management, was called up hastily to handle the crisis. He'd barely settled into his chair when the Lawn Dart docked with enough force to tilt the station 6 degrees. Empire security teams rushed into position, plasma rifles primed. What emerged wasn't an army or a kill squad, but a small posse of gray-haired humans in mismatched armor, carrying thermal flasks, wearing tactical vests over Hawaiian shirts, and chewing gum like it was a combat stimulant. Dottie Ellison led the pack with her signature gait, part purpose, part old knee injury. She had on a jean jacket with a rhinestone eagle on the back and a sidearm holstered beside a meat thermometer. Security aimed their weapons, but the group ignored them. Dottie walked up to the first guard and handed him a still-warm casserole. The man blinked, unsure whether this was a bribe or a bomb. It turned out to be broccoli cheddar, and when his scanner returned a harmless reading, it confused the entire chain of command. Dottie addressed a confused crowd with a voice that belonged behind a church podium and a war rally alike. She didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She simply said, "We've come to collect what's owed." Empire protocol dictated that Creel had to receive them. Reluctantly, he descended into the main chamber, flanked by legal officers and a holographic record keeper. His translator began its usual cycle, calibrating for Earth dialects, but was promptly overridden by a software patch that replaced the formal settings with a southern drawl and programmed every full phrase to end with "darling dut." Creel stared at Dottie, trying to determine if she was a genuine representative or an elaborate prank sent to humiliate him. "You're not supposed to be here," he said stiffly. "Neither was that Empire plasma bolt that killed my granddaughter," Dottie replied. Creel adjusted his cuffs, trying to maintain the upper hand. "We've issued condolences. Reparations are pending review. And in the meantime," Dottie said evenly, "we keep getting messages from Empire media calling her death an incidental casualty." "Is that what you call women on their porch baking cookies for a charity drive?" Creel winced. "Context matters." "That's what I'm here to provide," she said. Before the Empire could engage in more verbal gymnastics, Dottie reached into her satchel and pulled out a data crystal. It contained a stream of intercepted communications, Empire officers joking about Earth's reaction, mocking Linda Tucker's legacy, referring to Earth women as biological footnotes. The room fell quiet as the recording played. Even the hard-lined, desensitized bureaucrats flinched at the tone. One voice, unmistakably high-ranking, chuckled and said, "Let the humans cry over their casserole queen." Dottie didn't flinch. "You said context matters. Here's your context. You didn't just strike Earth. You insulted its memory." At that moment, the Empire's senior council motioned to cut the feed, but the damage was done. The council chambers, full of species who didn't even fully understand the human concept of grandma, began murmuring. Some whispered of old Earth war legends, others of barbecue diplomacy, others still of how Earth grief had a tendency to start revolutions. Creel swallowed hard. He'd seen riots start over less. To save face, he attempted damage control. These are isolated voices, not the Empire's stance. Dottie leaned forward. Every Empire says that, until the fire comes. He took a step back. And what, precisely, do you want? A treaty? An apology signed in stardust? What's the objective here? Dottie smiled the way someone smiles when they've already planted the dynamite. No more silence. No more pats on the head. We want you to say her name. On record, to every corner of your polished halls. We want you to recognize that when you attack a human, you don't get to decide who answers. He hesitated. And if we refuse, then you're gonna see what a pissed-off Earth woman over 70 can do with a ship full of duct tape and righteous rage. That wasn't an idle threat. In the past 48 hours, Dottie's crew had infiltrated 3 minor Empire data vaults and replaced every planetary anthem with karaoke versions of 90s American sitcom themes. One of their engineers had cracked the Empire's expense system and begun reimbursing Earth senior citizens with Empire credits for emotional inconvenience. A resistance movement was taking shape, and it wasn't led by generals. It was fueled by those who remembered who humans were before the galaxy told them how to behave. It was coffee table rebellion, backed by rage, grounded in memory, and dressed in flannel. After the meeting, Creel retreated into private council chambers. His advisors urged aggressive response, but he paused. Earth had embarrassed him once, and now it was doing it again, not with brute force, but with narrative dominance, with symbols, with a picture of a woman who'd never held a weapon in 20 years, now becoming the most talked-about casualty in 3 systems. Killing Linda had been a tactical mistake. Mocking her had been a political one. But ignoring her grandmother might become a historic one. Back aboard the Lawn Dart, Dottie and her crew ran diagnostics. They weren't celebrating. They were planning. Dottie wasn't interested in popularity or viral feeds. She was interested in leverage. Her people weren't trying to become heroes. They were trying to make sure this galaxy never mistook silence for surrender again. Rose, her oldest friend and now makeshift communications officer, handed her a report. A freighter filled with Empire dignitaries had gone dark. No distress signal. Just vanished near a disputed corridor where Earth veterans had once fought off pirates in what was called the Back Porch Blitz. The incident wasn't connected, yet, but rumors would swirl. That's what Dottie wanted. Uncertainty. The most useful weapon Earth had left. Think they'll bend? Rose asked. Dottie stared out the viewport, eyes fixed on the stars like they owed her something. They'll either bend or break, but we're not folding first. The Empire issued a response 2 hours later. It was cold, efficient, and layered in protocol. But at the end of it, in small print, was something different. A name, Linda Tucker, acknowledged as a casualty of unjustified force. The Empire didn't say regret, but they said acknowledged. It wasn't justice. It was a crack. For Dottie, it was a beginning, not of peace, but of pressure. Because Earth's women had always understood something the Empire forgot. Real change doesn't come from power. It comes from persistence. And they were just getting started. News of Linda Tucker's name being officially acknowledged by the Empire spread across the galaxy like wildfire in a wind tunnel. It was a small gesture, nearly invisible to most, buried beneath bureaucratic language and carefully chosen phrases, but it meant something to the humans. More than that, it meant something to the species watching Earth's retaliation unfold. Entire alien populations who had once dismissed humans as messy, emotional bipeds now reconsidered their assumptions. A race that could turn grief into leverage and sorrow into strategy was not to be underestimated. They didn't demand territory, treasure, or trials. They demanded memory, and worse for the Empire, they knew how to make everyone else remember too. That kind of cultural warfare was unfamiliar territory for a civilization used to ruling through intimidation and technological superiority. The Empire had spacefold engines, quantum projectors, and suncored fleets, but Earth had conviction and weirdly specific 20th century cultural references no one could seem to decode but that kept causing chaos. Dottie Ellison didn't pause to celebrate the acknowledgement. She barely gave it a nod before motioning to Rose to bring up the fleet status. The Lawn Dart had grown into something bigger, a small flotilla of retrofitted civilian vessels, modified by independent colonies, sympathetic smugglers, ex-Marines, and one intergalactic food truck crew whose pulled pork was reportedly good enough to cause temporary truces mid-firefight. They called themselves the Porchlight Brigade. Not an army, not even an official unit. Just angry, persistent, ungovernable citizens who all understood the message Linda's death had carried. You hurt one, you answer to all. General Hank McAllister had seen dozens of wars, some declared, most not. He'd seen what happened when soldiers rallied. But this was cultural upheaval turned into propulsion. It had taken the Empire months to put down an uprising on Siphon 9, where a single faction demanded agricultural autonomy. Earth had stirred half a dozen systems into open defiance using nothing but grief, gumption, and gifts of old sitcoms dubbed in alien tongues. Empire reports called it a mimetic insurgency cascade, but the real problem wasn't the transmission, it was the resonance. These weren't Earth's official diplomatic channels sparking rebellion. They were the widows and welders, the mechanics and nurses, the truckers and bartenders. They were the kind of humans the Empire never accounted for in their algorithms. Dottie stood at the heart of it. Her transmission log showed no threats, only stories. She recited Linda's life like a sermon, punctuated by evidence of the Empire's arrogance. Every child who heard her story knew her name. Every mother who'd ever buried a son without justice leaned in. Dottie didn't ask people to fight. She just reminded them why humans did. And when others joined her, she didn't form a command structure. She handed them a mission and a recipe. Keep fighting, and eat well while doing it. The Empire, reeling from diplomatic embarrassment and the erosion of public support across its outer colonies, launched a psychological campaign aimed at neutralizing Earth's influence. They created artificial personalities designed to mimic human patterns, avatars who posted empathetic videos, pretending to understand grief. But they failed to factor in Earth's very specific and unforgiving sense for authenticity. When one of their bots mistakenly quoted a Dr. Phil episode as a Churchill speech, the internet backlash caused it to implode in real time. One Earth blogger labeled it empathy cosplay. The phrase caught fire. Within days, even neutral species began using it to mock the Empire's tone-deaf messaging. Desperation followed. An Empire admiral proposed an assassination operation to eliminate Dottie Ellison and dismantle the Porchlight Brigade before their influence metastasized. But the plan leaked. Earth's intelligence intercepted it, and instead of issuing a warning, they let it roll out publicly. The leak didn't come in the form of a press release. It came from Dottie herself, live-streaming from her ship, calmly reading out the details of her own assassination plan while sipping sweet tea. The transmission ended with her staring into the camera and saying, "Honey, if they want to find me, I'll leave the porchlight on." It wasn't bravado. It was bait. The Empire fell into it. A stealth squadron, 6 ships, dispatched under strict radio silence, jumped into Earth-aligned space on a covert operation. Their orders were to breach the Lawn Dart and eliminate Dottie. What they found was a trap engineered not by military tacticians but by retired defense engineers, backyard inventors, and one disgruntled game show host who'd built a defense matrix using scavenged reality show tech. The first ship was fried by a rerouted solar flare. The second triggered a holographic decoy of Dottie's grandmother holding a casserole, which somehow caused a targeting AI to crash. The rest didn't make it past the automated laser grid shaped like lawn flamingos. Earth didn't release a statement afterward. They didn't have to. The footage of the Empire's elite units being outmaneuvered by Grandma's booby traps went viral within hours. Even Empire loyalists couldn't watch it without cringing. What hurt more than the defeat was a humiliation. No one feared them if they couldn't defeat a crew armed with frying pans and rerouted satellite dishes. The Empire's propaganda division tried to spin the event as a human trick, but when an alien news anchor described the encounter as the most creatively absurd military embarrassment in recorded history, the message was clear. The humans weren't just winning battles. They were reshaping the idea of power. In a closed session of the Empire's core council, high-level strategists debated how to contain the narrative. One proposed full-scale war. Another suggested isolating Earth entirely. But the youngest among them, a newly appointed Minister of Colonial Cohesion, posed a question that froze the room. What happens if we destroy them and the galaxy still remembers the woman on the porch more than our fleet? That was the Empire's fear now. Not Earth's weapons, but Earth's memory, its stories, its refusal to forget, to stay quiet, to sit down. And at the center of it stood a woman who didn't want a statue or a monument. Dottie didn't operate like a commander. She operated like a matriarch, a force that drew people not with orders but with presence. She offered no medals, no ranks. Her crew knew what they were fighting for. That was enough. When asked what the next move was, she didn't say attack. She said expand. Not into space, but into story. She coordinated with human historians, artists, songwriters, sending Earth's cultural archives into deep space on encrypted drives. She organized broadcasts of Linda's favorite movies, translated into every language they could afford. The humans didn't need to conquer. They needed to be remembered. That was the real war now. Not over land, not over systems or stars. It was a war for narrative. And Earth had just realized it was better at that than anyone else in the galaxy. Dottie closed her personal log with one sentence that she never transmitted, just for herself. They thought we were quiet because we were weak. But we were quiet because we were watching, and now they've given us a reason to speak. The fleet shifted course toward the Delveran border, where the Empire was pressuring colonies into compliance through trade coercion. Dottie didn't plan on fighting. She planned on showing up, sitting down at border stations, handing out copies of Linda's story, one datapad at a time. She'd wear her denim vest. She'd serve apple pie, and she'd let the stars carry the rest. The Empire still had power. But Earth had something else now, an idea, and that idea was spreading. The Delveran border had once been a place of quiet compliance. Colonies out here didn't shout or rebel. They tolerated the Empire's policies with weary pragmatism, preferring trade routes to skirmishes. But that changed the moment Dottie flotilla drifted into orbit like a caravan from another era. It wasn't an armada. It wasn't even a well-organized fleet. It was a patchwork of vessels painted in human colors, trailing banners that didn't bear military crests but homemade slogans like "We remember Linda" and "No more silent porches." The ships moved with the calm of people who had nothing to prove and everything to lose. Dottie didn't arrive to negotiate. She arrived to witness, and in doing so, she brought memory to the front lines. The first transmission she sent wasn't a demand. It was a recipe. Literally. Linda's peach cobbler recipe, converted into a data burst encoded through subharmonic frequencies. Embedded within the flour and sugar ratios was a compressed file detailing a coordinated Empire disinformation campaign, including audio records, planning memos, and directives from high-ranking officials who had privately referred to human protests as cultural tantrums. The message was simple. You underestimated grief. Now you're going to watch what it becomes when it's organized. The Delveran colonists listened, not because they were ready to fight, but because they were tired of feeling like statistics. They remembered the initial reports of Linda's death. They remembered how quickly her name had been buried under the language of unfortunate outcomes and regrettable misfires. And now here was her grandmother, not offering vengeance, not begging for justice, but inviting them to remember a woman who'd been silenced for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. That kind of truth didn't need fanfare. It needed space to breathe. And once it did, it infected everything the Empire tried to control. Within days, Delveran officials began resisting standard inspections. Empire trade auditors were denied docking access. Independent broadcasters on the surface aired replays of Dottie's speech to the Galactic Council, not because they were instructed to, but because people wanted to hear it again. No one asked for a revolution. But the way Delveran citizens began holding community gatherings and distributing digital pamphlets on Earth's cultural resistance made it clear that one was quietly blooming. The Empire responded as expected. They issued ultimatums, then retracted them under diplomatic pressure. They launched counter-narratives, one accusing Dottie of manipulating her granddaughter's death for political clout, another suggesting the entire Porchlight Brigade were being funded by criminal enterprises. None of it stuck. The more they tried to smear her, the more people leaned in to listen. Her authenticity was not just magnetic, it was indestructible. You couldn't falsify the cadence of a woman who'd raised 3 generations and buried 2 husbands. You couldn't mimic the rage of someone who'd survived both poverty and war and still found the strength to fight with dignity. Dottie didn't need to be believed. She just needed to be heard. Back on the Lawn Dart, the crew grew restless not with boredom but with expansion. New recruits showed up weekly. Not fighters, not soldiers, teachers, poets, orphanage directors, grief counselors. They came not with weapons, but with memory. They carried photographs, stories, recordings of people long lost to Empire negligence or direct action. It became something more than protest. It became a chorus. Each new arrival brought another verse to a song the Empire couldn't drown out. They tried interference fields. They tried censors. But information moved too fast, too organically, like a river shaping stone. The Porchlight Brigade began organizing satellite drops, cultural capsules sent to major systems. Each capsule contained a blend of human history and personal remembrance, a mixtape of Linda's favorite Earth songs, her journals annotated by her friends, videos of her daughter learning to read. These weren't grand gestures. They were intimate snapshots of a life interrupted. And across the galaxy, millions began to see her not as a casualty, but as a mirror, someone they knew, someone they lost, and someone who deserved to be named. The tide turned definitively when a surprise vote was held in the Kexri Consortium, a loose alliance of outer-rim colonies historically loyal to the Empire. The motion was simple: open trade with the Porchlight Brigade and recognize Linda Tucker as a victim of unjustified force. The measure passed by 3 votes. The Empire protested. The Kexri response was brutally concise. We serve our people, not your narratives. For the first time in over a decade, the Empire was forced to reckon with the limits of its reach. Not because someone had bombed their fleets or hacked their car systems, but because someone had reminded the galaxy what it meant to feel again. Their control had always relied on distance, emotional, moral, practical. But Earth's retaliation had made the abstract personal. It had made statistics bleed. General McAllister watched the network feeds in silence. He'd seen insurgencies rise and fall. He knew this one wouldn't end with a single treaty or dramatic surrender. This wasn't a battle that could be charted on maps. It was emotional territory, fluid and contagious. When the Empire had struck Linda, they had expected grief. What they never expected was that grief could be weaponized, not with bombs, but with names, and that names, once repeated, could be more dangerous than armies. In the final weeks of the campaign, Dottie initiated what she called the Open Chair Protocol. Every Porchlight Brigade vessel was to carry a single unoccupied seat in their common space, always left untouched, always facing the stars. Attached to each was a digital plaque bearing Linda's name and the phrase, "We left a light on." It became a symbol not of loss, but of invitation, a reminder that this wasn't about one woman. It was about all who were lost and forgotten, and all who would never be again. Empire forces didn't try to attack the Lawn Dart after that, not because they couldn't, because every attempt would generate another symbol, another story, another name. And the Empire had no answers left for names. Dottie had turned grief into a virus they couldn't quarantine. She stood on the deck of her ship as a fleet slowly pulled back from Delveran space. Not in retreat, in rhythm. The movement was deliberate, like a heartbeat. She wasn't chasing victory anymore. She was shaping aftermath. Her war had never been for territory. It was for narrative supremacy. And she had won. Not because the Empire surrendered, but because she made the galaxy remember a woman they never knew. And once a memory takes root, no empire can unmake it. The last message he sent wasn't to the Empire, or to Earth, or even to the Porchlight Network. It was a private beam, fired into deep space, encrypted with a key known only to her and one other. It contained Linda's full story, unedited, unfiltered, unbearably real. It was meant for the future, a reminder that stories are how civilizations survive, not by forgetting what they lost, but by refusing to forget who they were. As she closed the log, Dottie whispered into the quiet hum of her ship, voice just above her breath. They attacked our woman, so we became the voice they can't silence. And with that, the light stayed on,